Joining us to continue the discussion, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin is here. Also with us, Leah Littman, University of Michigan Assistant Professor of Law, and former Alabama Democratic Senator and former U.S. Attorney Doug Jones, who also helped guide Justice Jackson through her confirmation process. So good to have all of you here. Lisa, let's just look at the big picture here. 23 cases left undecided. That's about a third of the cases this term. What do you make of the backlog?
Well, first of all, we're at 22 now. We have a decision that's come down, not one of the ones that we were eagerly anticipating, in a case having to do with repatriation tax. Not exactly a hot button issue for our viewers or for voters generally, but we're down to 22. In terms of the backlog, Anna, we have seen in recent years definitely a growth in the number of cases that wait until the end of June, and at the same time, a diminution in the overall number of cases that the court is taking on the merits. And those two things have not escaped Supreme Court observers' notice. Their workload is generally smaller, and yet they are leaving until the end major decisions with big reverberations for our society and our politics. That's not something that I can necessarily explain, except to say it's one of those things that makes you go,
Yeah.
These folks are deciding fewer and fewer cases, and yet we are waiting until the end of June with bated breath for major decisions on guns, on abortion, and, of course, on presidential immunity.
Cases that could have impacts on every American in our lives, our daily lives, as well as the country and our democracy. Senator, the immunity case, of course, is the biggest one we're waiting on. The court could have decided not to take this case and just let the appellate court's decision stand, which rejected Trump's immunity argument. So is this already a victory for Trump on that case, given how long it is delaying his criminal trials?
Well, certainly, I think that, any criminal defendant usually wants to delay their trials. And Donald Trump is certainly no exception to that. And in his case, it involves even more. When you get a delay, you get toward the election, and the odds of a case going to trial, as the closer we get to the election, are slim and none. So, yes, in that sense, it's a victory. But I think it remains to be seen what kind of victory this will be. I tend to agree that this is likely to go back to the district court for some findings. I've never been one to believe that this issue was just black and white, yes or no, immunity or not. I think that the presidency is a little bit more complicated than that. And so we'll see how this goes. But I do expect it. Personally, I expect it to go back to the district court.
Leah, while we wait for that decision on presidential immunity, former Attorney General Eric Holder was on MSNBC yesterday and had this to say.
Anything less than a decision by the Supreme Court that says a president should be held to the laws just like any other American citizen should be. Anything other than that is absurd. The notion, for instance, well, if the president violated the criminal law but was doing so in his official capacity, there may be some basis to say that that's okay. We need to step back and think about that. Wait a minute. A president can violate the American criminal law if he or she is doing something in their official capacity. That is an absurd and dangerous conclusion.
Leah, what is your reaction to that?
I think it's important to keep in mind what the precise issue in this case is. It doesn't have to be whether presidents are necessarily immune from all criminal prosecutions whatsoever. It's instead whether the facts alleged in Special Counsel Jack Smith's indictment related to the events of January 6th are something that presidents are entitled to immunity from. And there, the answer has to be a resounding no. Whatever the scope of presidential immunity is, it just can't extend to a months-long effort to contest the results of a valid election and remain in office when you lost the election. So really, the Supreme Court has a very small task before it in this case, just answering whether this specific indictment alleges facts to which a president is plausibly entitled to immunity. And the answer is clearly no, which makes it so ridiculous that the court is taking as long as it is to resolve this case.
Senator, it has been nearly 2 years now to the day since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And since then, we've seen public trust of the court just crumble. According to the latest polls, it's been hovering around 40%, near record lows. I think the lowest was 38%. But how could that lack of trust in the court maybe be a factor as we're waiting some controversial cases here, again, dealing with immunity, abortion, gun rights, and more?
Well, I think the lack of trust, may affect individual justices. But remember, Anna, that this is not just about the court's decisions, the lack of trust. It's also about what you're seeing with Justice Alito and flags. It's about what you're seeing with Justice Thomas and all of the trips and whether or not he is, essentially being purchased for his decisions. That, I think, is contributing as much as anything. But it's a 1-2 punch when you get the decisions that are overturning decades of precedent with what appears to be personal issues involving the court. It's a major problem. So I think that will weigh on certain justices more than others. Obviously, we're seeing that it's not affecting some justices, but I think the others have got to think about how the court is being perceived by the American public right now. And in terms of timing and the delay, I agree. It's hard to explain why these delays are coming to the end of the term. But at the same time, this is such a fractured court right now. I think it's just taken longer to try to figure out what this is going to entail when you write these decisions. And it's just taken a long time. But I also think that they just like to get these and then get out of town.
Well, we usually see all of the decisions before the end of June. So that literally leaves this day, tomorrow, and then next week, right? Leah, looking at the immunity case, I recall during oral arguments, as we were bringing it to our viewers live, the audio of those, Justice Kavanaugh said that they were, quote, writing a rule for the ages. That's how consequential this case is, as they all are. But when it comes to a presidency, so if the justices do decide to side with Trump in this immunity case, one of the options here, how would that affect a potential Trump second term?
I think it would result in a Trump unleashed. If the justices were to side with Donald Trump in the immunity case, they would be effectively saying, look, of course you can overturn the result and try to overturn the results of a valid election, try to throw out lawfully cast votes, and you will face no consequences for doing so. They already allowed Trump to get back on the ballot in the Colorado disqualification case, notwithstanding his efforts related to January 6th. And if they side with him in the immunity case, then they will be saying there will be no criminal legal accountability and no political accountability whatsoever. That's an extremely dangerous prospect, and it would be emboldening Donald Trump and other future presidents to break the law in order to further their own political ends at the expense of American democracy. I think it's also worth pointing out that even though Justice Kavanaugh suggested he wanted to write an opinion for the ages, and several other justices gestured in that direction as well in the immunity case, in the tax case that Justice Kavanaugh just released for the majority of the court, he just said, look, we don't have to decide the precise extent of Congress's power to tax. All we have to say in this case is that this precise tax is constitutional. They could do something very similar in the immunity case, saying we don't have to decide the precise scope of immunity. All we need to do is say that what is alleged in this indictment does not fall within the bounds of presidential immunity.
There's this other case that we're dealing with that applies to January 6th and a defendant, the Fisher versus U.S. case. And this defendant's trying to throw out the obstruction of an official proceeding charge. And Lisa, that's also a charge Trump faces, right? So will that decision also have implications on Trump's legal fate, potentially?
Yes and no, because the argument that the defendant is making in that case is that the meaning of the statute has to be interpreted in light of some of the clauses that come before it that have to do with essentially destroying paperwork. And he's saying that corruptly impeding or obstructing an official proceeding is not something that someone can do in terms of physically obstructing it, but it has to do with, for example, destroying records or falsifying records. Now, if you look at the allegations in the indictment against former President Trump, when we think about things like the fake elector scheme, that's exactly what's going on there. So you could see a situation in which the defendant who has brought that Fisher case gets relief for himself and perhaps for many other January 6th defendants in ways that aren't necessarily applicable to the allegations against former President Trump as they pertain to that particular charge.